too aggressive, you're cutting prices too much, and you've got to work with these other chain stores. And I said, that's totally immoral and wrong. They said, Raymond, we always told you were too emotional and too airy-fairy.
Our policy is one which is called by an Afrikaans word apartheid. And I'm afraid that has been misunderstood so often. It could just as easily, and perhaps much better, be described as a policy of good neighborliness.
In 1948, the ruling National Party of South Africa officially implemented a system of structured racial segregation known as apartheid. From 1960 to 1983, 3.5 million non-white South Africans were removed from their homes and forced into segregated neighborhoods in one of the largest mass removals in modern history. The government separated education, medical care, public spaces, and other public services. Since the 1950s, uprisings and protests were met with the banning of opposition. State organizations responded with repression and violence, leading to other significant human rights violations and sparking lengthy arms and trade embargoes from the global community.
You could never be what you wanted to be in life because the system just simply did not allow you to move beyond where you are.
The apartheid laws sought to disrupt, destroy, and segregate society.
When you come out of a period of injustice and where injustices have been the practice, then obviously there is a need to find a way to close the book on the past.
It only took people of courage who were willing to risk, number one, to take the risk of losing what they already have and step across that line and say, I think I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do.
I went to university in '49, and it was absolutely a hotbed of politics. We were in a Liberal Party, and there was a Nationalist Party, there was a Communist Party. And as we arrived, all of us were very keen students, and we had a class of about 40. We had a professor, a long-haired professor, and he said, right, why have you guys come to my class? I'll answer the question, and I want you to put your hands up if I'm right. You want to make money quickly. Everyone put their hands up. And he said, I'm going to fail you all in 3 years' time if you think that that is the aim of business and that's the way to run a business. He was a very unusual man and firmly believing in no collusion. Governments don't care about people generally once they're elected. Business people don't care about the man in the street generally. Price fixing, cutting away competition, creating a monopoly to avoid competition. He hammered away at us that is what this is all about. It was absolutely crucial to my whole life because I'd been struggling whether to become a doctor or go into business. I was always keen on something broader than purely the maximization of profit, important as it was.
While at UCT, Raymond continued to run a chain of night schools, teaching young black adults to read and write, something he began while still at high school, where, as the only Jewish boy, he had learnt what it had meant to be discriminated against. It ignited the desire to always fight for the underdog. Raymond had also learned the importance of caring for society from his father, who, amongst other acts of kindness and charity, was instrumental in the building of the Red Cross Children's Hospital. Gus Ackerman was a pioneer in South African retail in the 20s and 30s and had successfully built up one of South Africa's first chain of stores called Ackerman's. But his approach to business was very different to what Professor Hutt was teaching at UCT.
My father said, I'm going to take you out of university. This guy is talking absolute rubbish. He's a university professor and we're in the hard world of business. And maximizing a profit is exactly what business's goal is. And I said, well, that's not what this guy is telling us. And we've got 3 years to read all his books and argue the point on this.
When Raymond graduated convinced that business could play a major role in caring for society, he began his real-world training within Greatermans, a company that had bought the Ackerman's chain from his father. Raymond relished in the opportunity to learn everything there was to know about the retail industry, But his new employers would not embrace his consumer sovereignty philosophy, and it caused constant tension as he rose through the ranks. But things were changing, especially across the Atlantic.
I managed to get a trip to America where there was a supermarket conference, and this guy was a guy called Bernardo Trujillo. He had people coming from all over the world, like us. Do we start supermarkets or don't we? And learn from America, because we learned from America, who started in 1914, 1915.
There were only 10 of us at the time. This was 1957, 58. This was just the beginning of the civil rights movement.
He was a big, suave Colombian from South America, but a very bright man. And he was mad about Wendy, by the way. I had to watch him like a hawk.
We went back to America several times and saw the progress that was made and watched the rise of civil rights. Almost subliminally, it had an enormous effect on us. We studied in supermarkets in the South, and we saw where the population ratios were the same in South Africa as they were in America. Supermarkets worked.
Freshly inspired, Raymond began to apply Trujillo's supermarketing principles of giving consumers low prices and started Checkers, albeit watched skeptically by the Greaterman's board.
They were very conservative, and they only understood clothing and high margins. They didn't understand the thrust of a supermarket, low prices fighting like mad for the consumer, how food prices affect every household, particularly poor people. It was a fight literally for 8 or 9 years.
The Checkers chain grew to 85 stores, and Raymond began to build a reputation, winning numerous accolades in the process, but not winning the favor of his own employers or the other chain stores.
Business is tough, we want to maximize profit, your prices are too low, and unless you agree to fix prices with the other chains, you won't keep your job. I said, well, I won't do it. I cannot do it. It's against everything I believe in. And I remember walking round and round Zoo Lake in Johannesburg. How am I going to tell my wife that I've been chucked out with 4 kids? I was expecting her to say, Raymond, what are we going to do? How are we going to look after the 4 kids? She jumped out of bed because she'd been ill and said, wow, this is the best day of your life. And if you open a business, which I'm suggesting you do, I'll back you all the way.
He thinks in a different way from other people. Although his feet have always been very firmly on the ground, but his head's always been in the sky.
With the financial backing from 50 friends and family, Raymond and Wendy were able to purchase 4 small stores in Cape Town called Pick n Pay.
It was a very difficult time when we bought Pick n Pay. We were going into not the isolation period, but South Africa was being criticized the world over for apartheid, and we were now going to build a business in an apartheid society, and we had to work out how we were going to handle ourselves.
We were worried when we heard that there's another owner that's going to take over. We were scared that we might lose our jobs, because it was hard for a black person to find employment. Raymond Ackerman called me to his office one morning. He said, Stanley, we are going to build this company. He didn't say, you're going to work for me in this company. He said, we are going to build this company. Wow, what a statement. A white person who would never be so open about his secrets, his vision, and he's saying, I'm going to take you with me in this vision.
And this became the fundamental principle of Pick n Pay, and all our strategy goes into here. Consumer sitting on top of the table, not maximizing profit, but the consumer of this country, with 4 legs: administration, the merchandise we sell, and then the third leg is not just advertising, but our involvement with society, social responsibility, sustainability, which is so important today, and the 4th leg is people. So it's all interrelated. We were very young and green, and we weren't doing it too professionally, but at least we were doing it in our philosophies. Our direction was appealing and right. So from day one, we said we were going to treat all our staff, regardless of the laws of the land, as if they were in a normal country, and they would be treated as people.
In the early years, when you couldn't appoint a black person as a manager, the company simply ignored that and appointed black managers.
By taking on Stanley as a young man and make him the floor manager at a store in a white suburb, as lily white as Sea Point, imagine what that meant. And when he walked home, he would say, "I'm the store manager at Pick and Pay in Sea Point." And people would look at him, "Are you mad? Are you making up stories?"
That is where I found my home. That is where I actually took off, you know, and realized my own potential through Raymond Ackerman. What a man. What a man.
So as we were quietly promoting black people, the government were keeping tabs on us, and eventually I was called into Mr. Forster when he had got together a whole lot of papers for me to show him that the wives of his cabinet ministers had actually written into me to say, "What a wonderful manager you have in Rondebosch. What a great guy you have in Claremont. How courteous he is." And so I had all these letters in a file, and I said, "Mr. Forster, this is your cabinet ministers' wives writing to me to say what a wonderful guy I've got. For goodness sake, let us promote on merit." He said it's against the Group Areas Act, which says you can't promote black people in a white area. I said, "Well, we've done it. And what are we going to do about it?" He said, "Well, we can either arrest you or turn the blind eye." He said, "I'll turn a blind eye."
South African laws prohibited black people from being in any position of authority, even handling money. It was an act of defiance.
We're trying to follow the law, but we can't follow the law if it's inhuman to our own people.
When Mr. Ackerman showed interest in people, especially people who were marginalized, each and every person went into another gear because they knew this is a company where I can grow as a person.
It created that consistent note in everybody's mind, it can happen. It can happen.
In the early years, in the 80s, when blacks couldn't own any property in the urban areas, the company took a very brave stand.
Every which way I turned, I hit a brick wall of apartheid, of ridiculous laws and Group Areas Act. It was heartbreaking how difficult it was to build some houses for our black staff.
I couldn't raise a bond at the bank because I couldn't own property. Mr. Ackerman said to me, "We must now build you a home."
And through the Urban Foundation, Raymond went to see, I think it was Forster at the time, and he granted 99-year leasehold.
To take that step and be the first company to come into a township and build a home. It was the first time I actually saw 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, a living room, and a fireplace. It was a seed that represented that there is goodness.
He was constantly in a clash with the government about price control of bread, price control of petrol.
As a student and growing up and reading the Daily Mail and the Financial Mail, I wondered when he did the real work, because every time he's on the newspaper fighting the cartels.
And he was always pushing for the bread prices to come down, because bread was, of course, a staple diet for the people that came from a disadvantaged background.
Whenever there was a fixed price, that was a target for us to break it and have a big fight with the suppliers and a big fight with government.
My job description made it impossible for me to accede to his request.
I'd fought him as the Minister of Energy because I was trying to cut the price of petrol and he wouldn't allow us to do it and the government wouldn't allow us.
His concern for the consumers was a genuine concern. It wasn't just a business trick to attract business away from his competitors.
My board were very worried about me being involved with politics. I said, I'm not involved with politics. We're trying to get a fairer country for our own people and for our customers, and that can't be wrong.
It wasn't a committee of executives sitting around trying to design the ideal corporate process of cause-related marketing or being seen to do the right thing. It just seemed like a good idea, so we did it.
And Raymond and Wendy are in the forefront of that group of good men and women who feel they should plow whatever resources are in their command in order to develop a community which has been neglected for more than 3 centuries.
They defied the laws of an unethical society to build an ethical company and an ethical family, and to always teach us the value of humanity as opposed to values which will not value the laws that were wrong. They were inherently wrong.
If you say it's a good value to stand together and together accept the challenges of your time, then bridges need to be built in order to achieve the common good.
Business is there to make a profit, but how you do it is up to the conscience of the individuals and the conscience of the business. This business just happens to believe that the right way to make a profit is to actually invest into society as a whole.
We have an entire generation that still is totally oblivious to what apartheid really was and has no knowledge of what the implications of the apartheid system were on their parents, their grandparents, and their impact on the economy.
I started with Pick n Pay as a trolley porter in January 1972. And at that time, I was a student at Naledi High in Soweto. And this has been a very interesting journey.
Believing that each generation is responsible to identify the obstacles standing in the way of equality and implement steps towards transformation, Raymond and Wendy fought hard against segregation, providing opportunities and using education like weapons, helping people to reach their full potential.
If you go into Wendy's office, you'll find all her graduates on there. They be doctors, being politicians. They have actually touched so many South Africans. And in a sense, that it is education that begins to take those poor people out of that cycle of poverty.
Doing good is good business is a fundamental principle of Pick n Pay from the day we started and today as well. In my mind, it's the right way to build a successful business.
Business particularly has an important role to play in recognizing the inherent dignity of all human beings. You need to stand together and work together, and you cannot do so successfully unless you overcome bitterness, unless you overcome recrimination, unless you overcome even hatred.
Successful transformation is shifting of minds. And that's not going to happen overnight. That's going to take a couple of generations.
We took 300 years to muck the place up, and we're going to take 300 years to get it right.
If people can learn to treat other people with disrespect, then surely we can learn to be good people as well.
The most important thing is your basic stuff, nee? Your basic stuff is love, compassion. And Afrikaans is het selfbeheersing, nee? You have to have that self-respect also.
We need to look at the needs of society and add them into our cost of doing business today. And one of those costs is to accelerate access to the formal economy for small traders and for small businesses.
People will see it as business, but in fact the whole idea is it's the upliftment of the community.
Being exposed to the workshop and learning how things are done in a business way, that changed me a lot.
I want to work hard, slowly, but to push forward to understand how to do things better. And now it's uplifting and changing the life of my community and my family too.
We are all the same, and we all need to be treated the same, and we all need to be loved, and we all need to love somebody and have somebody care for us.
There's an old story about, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You give a man a fishing rod and you feed him for life. There's one step that people forget, and that's the step of giving them the pond to fish in.
When you see our sticker there, we are just happy. I'm proud. I'm proud.
You need to learn to be passionate, just not to think about yourself. Go outside the box, look at other people, what they do. Help if you can.
Standing on the shoulders of the giants in the name of Mr. Ackerman, I know it was all possible, that I could be whatever I wanted to be if I basically focused and I put my mind into it.
This culture of giving, this culture of caring, become part of the DNA in the organization.
I would love to be able to look back in 50 years' time and saying, our dream has succeeded. We've created entrepreneurs. We've helped communities evolve. We've made a difference.
I was driving back from town recently and I saw a car, absolutely packed station wagon with our opposition's goods. So I said to my driver, follow that car. So we followed it and I got out of the car when the lady went into her house. She said, you've been following me. I said, I know, not for the wrong reason, but why are you shopping now? You used to be a Pick and Pay customer, I'm sure. And she said, right, Mr. Ackerman, you come in, you can have a cup of tea. I know you, I've seen your picture. And she gave me a go that she had brought back some stockings about 10 years ago. And we say we take back always without question something that's not right. Your cashier wouldn't take it back. I was so cross. I and all my family and friends left Pick and Pay. So I said, can I have their names and addresses? And I got them all and I went to visit them all. I got them all back. This all happened since I've retired. So that's how much it means to us, right?